The outcast's escape. The vast emptiness of space seemed to mock Zalrin as she piloted her small craft through the darkness. The ship, little more than an escape pod, shuddered and groaned with each passing moment. It wasn't designed for long-distance travel, but desperation had forced her hand. Behind her lay the glittering world of Tharka, her home for all of her 63 cycles, a mere adolescence by her species' standards. Ahead lay only uncertainty and the faint hope of survival. Zalrin's 4 eyes blinked in rapid succession, a sign of stress among her kind. Her pale blue skin, normally iridescent and smooth, had taken on a dull, ashen quality. The events of the past few days replayed in her mind, a constant loop of fear and regret. It had started with a discovery. As a junior scientist in the Tharkan Institute of Genetic Research, Zalrin had stumbled upon something extraordinary, a way to potentially cure a degenerative disease that had plagued her people for generations. But her excitement had quickly turned to horror when she realized the implications of her find. The cure would work on all Tharkans, regardless of social status or genetic purity. In Tharkan society, such equality was anathema. The ruling caste, the exalted, maintained their power through careful control of medical treatments and genetic modifications. Zalrin's discovery threatened to upend centuries of carefully maintained social order. She had naively believed that the benefits would outweigh the political ramifications. How wrong she had been. The memory of the tribunal still sent shivers down her spine. The exalted, their skin gleaming with metallic implants that displayed their status, had looked down upon her with contempt. Her own family, seated in the audience, had turned their backs on her, a gesture of ultimate rejection in Tharkan culture. Zalrin of the Renkar lineage, the chief adjudicator, had intoned, his voice cold and unfeeling. You stand accused of sedition, of attempting to disrupt the natural order of our society. How do you plead? Her voice had trembled as she responded. I only sought to help our people, to end suffering. Silence. The adjudicator's thunderous command had echoed through the chamber. Your help would destroy everything we have built. You would have the exalted mingle their pure genes with the lesser castes. This cannot be allowed. The verdict had been swift and merciless. Exile. Genetic suppression. Her name stricken from all records. It was as if she had never existed. Now, as her ship drifted through the cosmic void, Zalrin felt truly alone for the first time in her life. The Tharkans were a communal species, their minds linked through a low-level telepathic field. To be cut off from that constant background hum of thoughts and emotions was almost physically painful. A sudden alarm jolted her from her melancholy. The ship's systems, already strained beyond their limits, were beginning to fail. Life support was flickering, and the engines were losing power. Panic rose in her throat as she realized she might die here, alone in the emptiness of space, her discoveries lost forever. With trembling hands, she began to scan nearby systems, hoping against hope to find someplace, anywhere, she could land. Most of the planets within range were gas giants or barren rocks, completely inhospitable to life. But then, on the edge of her scanner's range, she detected something promising. A small blue-green world orbited a yellow star. The readings were faint at this distance, but they suggested an oxygen-rich atmosphere and large bodies of water. It wasn't much, but it was her only chance. Zalrin input the coordinates and diverted all remaining power to the engines. The ship lurched forward, straining against the vast distances of space. As she drew closer to the planet, she began to pick up strange signals, artificial emissions that suggested intelligent life. Her heart raced. First contact with an alien species was both thrilling and terrifying. Would they welcome her? Attack her? She had no way of knowing, but she was out of options. The ship entered the planet's atmosphere, and alarms blared as the hull temperature skyrocketed. Zalrin gripped the controls tightly, fighting to keep the craft stable as it plummeted towards the surface. Through the viewscreen, she could see a vast ocean approaching rapidly, with a landmass visible on the horizon. Please, she whispered to no one in particular. Let me survive this. The impact, when it came, was brutal. The ship skipped across the ocean's surface like a stone, each impact threatening to tear it apart. Finally, with a screech of protesting metal, it came to rest on a sandy beach. For a long moment, Zalrin sat motionless, her body aching from the crash. Slowly, cautiously, she rose from her seat and made her way to the airlock. The ship's sensors indicated that the atmosphere was breathable, albeit with a higher oxygen content than she was used to. Taking a deep breath, she cycled the airlock and stepped out onto an alien world. The first thing that struck her was the brightness. Tharka's sun was older and dimmer than this star, and she had to squint against the glare. The air was thick with unfamiliar scents, salt from the ocean, the musty odor of vegetation she couldn't identify. Waves lapped at the shore, a soothing rhythm that helped calm her racing hearts. Zalrin took a few tentative steps, marveling at the feeling of sand beneath her feet. She had only ever read about such terrain in scientific journals. A cool breeze ruffled her crest, bringing with it a mist of sea spray. Despite her fear and uncertainty, she couldn't help but feel a sense of wonder at this new world. That wonder was quickly replaced by alarm, as she heard a strange sound coming from the nearby tree line. Something was moving through the vegetation, something large. Zalrin froze, her body instinctively shifting colors to try and blend in with her surroundings, a defensive mechanism that had served her ancestors well, but was useless against an unknown predator. The rustling grew louder, and then suddenly, a figure emerged from the trees. Zalrin's 4 eyes widened in shock. The creature was Bictal, like her, but the similarities ended there. It had only 2 eyes, set in a flat face with a protruding nose. Its skin was a pale pinkish color, and it was covered in some kind of artificial covering. A tool of some kind was clutched in one of its manipulator limbs, hands she recalled from her xenobiology studies. The creature's face contorted into an expression she couldn't interpret, and it began to make sounds. It took Zalrin a moment to realize it was attempting to communicate. "Holy shit," the creature said, its voice deep and resonant. You're not from around here, are you?" Zalrin's universal translator, a standard piece of equipment for Tharkan scientists, struggled to parse the unfamiliar language. After a moment, it provided a rough translation. She attempted to respond, her own melodious language sounding strange to her ears in this alien environment. I come in peace," she said, using a phrase she had read in old first contact protocols. "My ship crashed. I seek asylum." The creature, which she now realized must be one of the planet's native intelligent species, seemed to relax slightly. It lowered the tool it had been holding and took a step closer. "Asylum, huh?" it said. "Well, you've come to the right place, I guess. We got a bit of a reputation for taking in strays." The creature's mouth curved upward in what Zalrin's xenobiology training suggested was a smile, a sign of non-aggression in many species. "I'm Jake," the creature continued. "I'm human. And you are?" "Zalrin," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. "I am. I was a scientist of the Tharkan people. But now," she trailed off, unsure how to explain her situation to this alien being. Jake seemed to sense her distress. "Hey, it's okay," he said, his voice softening. "You're safe here. Let's get you somewhere more comfortable, and you can tell me your story. I've got a feeling it's going to be an interesting one." As Jake led her away from the beach and towards what appeared to be a settlement in the distance, Zalrin felt a glimmer of hope for the first time since her exile. She didn't know what challenges this new world would bring, but at least she wasn't facing them alone. Little did she know that her arrival on this backwater planet called Earth was about to change not just her fate, but the destiny of 2 civilizations. The adventure was only beginning. An unlikely alliance, the small coastal town of New Haven, buzzed with excitement and apprehension. Word of Jake's encounter with the alien visitor had spread quickly, and now the town's residents gathered in the community center, a repurposed cargo container that served as the heart of their fledgling colony. Jake stood at the front of the room, trying to calm the clamor of voices. Beside him, Zalrin huddled in a makeshift cloak, her alien features hidden from the curious and sometimes hostile stares of the colonists. "Everyone, please," Jake called out, his voice cutting through the din. "I know this is unexpected, but we need to approach this rationally." Mayor Alina Chen, a stern-faced woman with streaks of gray in her dark hair, stepped forward. "Jake," she said, her voice tight with concern, "you brought an unknown alien into our settlement without consulting anyone. Do you have any idea of the risks involved?" Jake met her gaze steadily. "I do, Mayor. But I also know that leaving her stranded on the beach would have been wrong. She needs our help." Dr. Amit Patel, the colony's chief medical officer, raised his hand. "I've done some preliminary scans," he said, his accent clipped and precise. "While her biology is certainly alien, she doesn't appear to carry any pathogens that pose an immediate threat to us. However, I'd recommend a more thorough quarantine period to be certain." A murmur ran through the crowd. Some nodded in agreement with Dr. Patel's caution, while others still looked skeptical. "And what about her intentions?" This came from Colonel Sarah Reeves, head of the colony's small security force. Her eyes narrowed as she studied Zalrin. "How do we know she's not a scout for an invasion force?" At this, Zalrin stepped forward, letting the cloak fall away. There were gasps and a few muffled screams as the colonists got their first clear look at her alien features, the 4 eyes, the pale blue skin, the crest that rose and fell with her emotions. "I am no threat to you," she said, her voice melodious despite the stress evident in her posture. The universal translator rendered her words into English with only a slight delay. "I am a scientist, an exile from my own people. I seek only sanctuary and the chance to continue my research that could benefit both our species." The room fell silent as the colonists processed her words. Jake saw a mix of emotions on their faces: fear, curiosity, and in some, a glimmer of excitement at the possibilities this encounter presented. Mayor Chen was the first to speak. "You say you're in exile. Why? What crime did you commit that was so severe your own people cast you out?" Zalrin's crest flattened, a sign of sadness that Jake was beginning to recognize. "My crime was to discover a cure that would have helped all of my people, regardless of their social status. In my society, such equality is unacceptable." This revelation caused another stir among the colonists. Jake could see that many were starting to look at Zalrin with sympathy rather than suspicion. Dr. Patel leaned forward, his scientific curiosity piqued. "A cure? For what exactly?" "A degenerative genetic condition that has plagued my people for generations," Zalrin explained. "It causes a breakdown in cellular regeneration, leading to premature aging and death. My research suggested a way to repair the damaged genes, but the ruling caste feared it would upset the social order." "That's barbaric," muttered one of the colonists, a sentiment that seemed to be shared by many in the room. Colonel Reeves, however, remained skeptical. "It's a compelling story," she said, "but how can we verify any of this? For all we know, this could be an elaborate ruse." Jake stepped in. "I've seen her ship, Colonel. It's barely more than an escape pod, and it's in no condition to fly again. Whatever her story, I don't think she's part of any invasion force." Mayor Chen held up a hand for silence. "We need to make a decision," she said. "This isn't just about Zalrin. It's about what kind of colony, what kind of people we want to be. We came to this planet for a fresh start, to build a society based on our highest ideals. Can we really turn away someone in need simply because they're different from us?" The room erupted in debate. Some argued for caution, citing the potential risks of harboring an alien refugee. Others spoke passionately about the opportunity for scientific and cultural exchange. Through it all, Zalrin stood quietly, her alien eyes taking in the strange dynamics of human decision-making. As the argument reached a fever pitch, an unexpected voice cut through the noise. Old Tom, the colony's eldest member and something of a living legend, rose shakily to his feet. "I remember," he said, his voice quavering but strong. "When we humans thought we were alone in the universe, we looked up at the stars and wondered if anyone else was out there. Now one of those someones has landed on our doorstep, asking for help. Are we really going to turn her away?" A hush fell over the room. Old Tom rarely spoke at these meetings, but when he did, people listened. "I say we help her," he continued, "not just because it's the right thing to do, but because it's who we are. Humans don't back down from a challenge. We don't hide from the unknown. We explore it. We learn from it. And sometimes we befriend it." His words seemed to resonate with the colonists. Jake could see heads nodding, expressions softening. Even Colonel Reeves looked thoughtful. Mayor Chen surveyed the room, sensing the shift in mood. "All right," she said. "Let's put it to a vote. All in favor of granting Zalrin sanctuary and assistance, raise your hands." Slowly at first, then with increasing confidence, hands went up across the room. It wasn't unanimous, but it was a clear majority. "The ayes have it," Mayor Chen announced. She turned to Zalrin, her expression solemn but not unkind. "Welcome to New Haven, Zalrin. We'll do our best to help you, and in return, we hope you'll share your knowledge with us. But understand this, the safety of this colony is my first priority. Any action that threatens that safety will not be tolerated." Zalrin bowed her head, a gesture of deep respect in her culture. "I understand," she said, "and I am grateful. I swear by all that I hold dear that I will do everything in my power to repay your kindness and contribute to your community." As the meeting broke up, Jake approached Zalrin. "Well," he said with a smile, "looks like you're staying. How about we find you a place to set up your lab? I have a feeling your research is going to be pretty popular around here." Zalrin's crest rippled with an emotion Jake couldn't quite interpret. Relief, perhaps, or excitement. "I would like that very much," she said. "But first, I have so many questions about your people, your culture. This process of voting. It's fascinating. In my society, such decisions would never be left to the masses." Jake chuckled. "Well, get ready for a crash course in democracy, alien science, and small-town politics. Something tells me life in New Haven is about to get a lot more interesting." As they walked out of the community center, neither Jake nor Zalrin could have predicted just how prophetic those words would prove to be. The arrival of this alien refugee was about to catalyze a chain of events that would challenge both their societies and push the boundaries of what it meant to be human, or Thurkin. The adventure was just beginning, and the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath in anticipation of what was to come. Cultural exchange. The weeks following Zalrin's arrival in New Haven were a whirlwind of activity and discovery. The alien scientist threw herself into learning about human culture with the same fervor she applied to her research, while the colonists found themselves captivated by the knowledge she brought from the stars. Jake had taken on the role of Zalrin's primary liaison, helping her navigate the intricacies of human society. Today, he found her in the makeshift laboratory the colonists had set up, her 4 eyes fixed intently on a holographic display of human DNA. "Fascinating," Zalrin murmured as Jake entered. "Your genetic structure is both simpler and more complex than ours in ways I never imagined." Jake chuckled. "I'll take your word for it. Ready for a break? I thought we could take a walk, show you a bit more of the colony." Zalrin's crest rippled in what Jake had come to recognize as agreement. As they strolled through New Haven's streets, really just packed dirt paths between prefab structures, Jake couldn't help but marvel at how quickly the alien had become a part of their community. "I've been meaning to ask," Jake said as they walked. "What do you think of us so far? Humanity, I mean." Zalrin was quiet for a moment, considering. "You are unpredictable," she said finally, "in ways both wonderful and terrifying. On Tharka, every aspect of life is carefully controlled, roles assigned from birth. But here, you all seem so Free. They passed the community garden, where colonists were tending to earth plants alongside alien flora that Zalrin had helped cultivate. The merger of terrestrial and extraterrestrial agriculture was already promising to solve many of the colony's food production challenges. That freedom comes with its own challenges, Jake admitted. But we wouldn't have it any other way. Speaking of which, how are you adjusting to making your own decisions all the time? Zalrin's crest flattened slightly, a sign of embarrassment. It is overwhelming at times. Yesterday, Dr. Patel asked what I wanted for lunch, and I stood there for 10 minutes, unable to decide. On Tharka, our meals are predetermined based on our nutrient needs and social status. Jake laughed, but not unkindly. Don't worry, you'll get the hang of it. Choice can be paralyzing at first, but it's also what drives us forward. It's why we're out here on this planet in the first place. As they reached the edge of the settlement, they came upon a group of children playing an improvised game with a ball made from native plant fibers. The kids waved excitedly at Zalrin, who waggled her crest in return, a gesture she'd adopted to mimic human waving. The children, Zalrin mused, they accept me so easily. On Tharka, they would have been taught to fear and distrust anything different. Jake nodded. Kids have a way of cutting through the BS and seeing things as they are. It's a quality we adults could stand to remember more often. Their walk took them to the beach where Zalrin had first landed. Her ship, now stripped for useful technology, sat half-buried in the sand, a monument to the day everything changed for New Haven. I've been thinking, Zalrin said as they looked out over the ocean, about the similarities between your colony and my own situation. We're both outcasts, in a way. You, seeking a new life away from Earth, and me, exiled from my home. Jake considered this. I suppose you're right. Maybe that's why we were so quick to take you in. We know what it's like to be the outsiders. As the twin suns began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, they made their way back to the colony. The evening shift was beginning at the new medical research facility, where Zalrin's knowledge of Tharkan medicine was being combined with human expertise to make breakthrough after breakthrough. Dr. Patel greeted them at the entrance, his eyes shining with excitement. Zalrin, Jake, you won't believe what we've discovered. The enzyme extracted from those alien fungi you identified. It's showing remarkable effectiveness against several human autoimmune disorders. This could revolutionize treatments back on Earth. Zalrin's crest rose in pleasure. That is excellent news, Dr. Patel. I am glad my knowledge can be of help to your people. As they entered the facility, Jake marveled at the sight of human and alien technology working in tandem. Zalrin's holographic interfaces had been adapted to work with human computing systems, creating a hybrid technology that was more advanced than anything the colonists had brought from Earth. In one corner, Colonel Reeves was deep in discussion with Zalrin's former assistant, a young engineering prodigy named Lyra who had defected from a Tharkan outpost after hearing of Zalrin's exile. They were poring over schematics of Tharkan defensive systems, looking for ways to adapt the technology to protect the colony. It's amazing how much progress we've made in such a short time, Jake remarked. Zalrin nodded. Indeed, on Tharka, such rapid advancement would be seen as dangerous, destabilizing. But here, it is celebrated. Your people's adaptability is truly remarkable. As they made their way through the facility, Jake noticed Zalrin pausing to assist various researchers, answering questions and offering insights with patience and enthusiasm. She had come a long way from the frightened, disoriented alien who had crashed on their shores. You know, Jake said as they reached Zalrin's personal lab, when you first arrived, some people worried you might be a threat to our way of life. But if anything, you've helped us become more human. Zalrin's crest rippled in confusion. I do not understand. How can I, an alien, make you more human? Jake smiled. By reminding us of our best qualities, our curiosity, our drive to explore and understand, our willingness to accept those who are different. Working with you has brought out the best in us." Before Zalrin could respond, an alarm blared through the facility. Red lights flashed, and colonists began rushing towards the central command center. "What's happening?" Zalrin asked, her crest flattening in alarm. Jake's face was grim. "I don't know, but it can't be good. Come on." They raced to the command center, where they found Mayor Chen, Colonel Reeves, and Dr. Patel huddled around a communications terminal. The mayor's face was ashen as she looked up at their arrival. "We just received a transmission from the orbital satellite array," she said, her voice tight with tension. "A fleet of ships has entered the system. They're not human, and they're heading straight for us." Zalrin's 4 eyes widened in horror. "No," she whispered. "They found me." As the implications of her words sank in, a heavy silence fell over the room. The peaceful existence they had built, the alliance between human and alien, was about to face its greatest test. The Tharkans were coming, and New Haven stood squarely in their path. Jake looked at Zalrin, saw the fear and determination warring in her alien features. He reached out and squeezed her hand, a human gesture of comfort she had come to understand. "Whatever happens," he said firmly, "we face it together. You're one of us now." As the colony erupted into frantic preparation for the coming storm, Jake couldn't help but wonder, had their acts of kindness and cultural exchange unknowingly set the stage for interstellar conflict? And if so, were they ready to face the consequences of their humanity? The answer, he knew, would determine not just the fate of New Haven, but potentially the course of human history. The true test of their unlikely alliance was about to begin. Impending threat. The news of the approaching Tharkan fleet spread through New Haven like wildfire, transforming the once peaceful colony into a hive of frantic activity. In the command center, Mayor Chen had called an emergency meeting of the colony's leadership. "What are we dealing with exactly?" Colonel Reeves demanded, her eyes fixed on the holographic display showing the incoming ships. Zalrin, her crest flat against her head in distress, manipulated the controls with trembling hands. 5 capital ships," she said, her voice tight. 3 destroyers, 2 carriers. It's a standard Tharkan pursuit fleet. Jake whistled low. "That's a lot of firepower for one refugee scientist." "It's not just about me," Zalrin said, her 4 eyes blinking rapidly. "The exalted are ruling caste. They're paranoid about maintaining their power. The mere existence of my research threatens everything they've built. They won't stop until they've eliminated all trace of it, and anyone who might have knowledge of." The implications of her words hung heavy in the air. Mayor Chen's face was grim as she turned to Colonel Reeves. "What are our defensive capabilities?" The colonel's expression was equally somber. "Limited. We have some basic point defense systems, but nothing designed to repel a space-based attack. We're a colony, not a military outpost." Dr. Patel spoke up, his usual calm demeanor shaken. "What about evacuation? Surely we have enough ships to go where?" Jake interrupted. "We're light years from the nearest human settlement. We'd never make it before they caught up to us." A heavy silence fell over the room. It was Lyra, Zalrin's young Tharkan assistant, who finally broke it. "We fight," she said, her voice small but determined. "We've been adapting Tharkan technology to human systems. Maybe we can use that to our advantage." Colonel Reeves nodded slowly. "The kid's right. We might be outgunned, but we got something they don't expect. A hybrid of human and Tharkan tech, plus intimate knowledge of their systems, thanks to Zalrin and Lyra." Mayor Chen looked around the room, her gaze settling on each face in turn. "All right," she said finally. "We prepare to defend ourselves, but I want options beyond just military resistance. Zalrin, is there any chance of negotiating with your people?" Zalrin's crest rippled in a gesture of uncertainty. The exalted do not negotiate with those they see as inferior. "But perhaps if we could demonstrate the value of cooperation between our peoples, show them the advancements we've made." "It's worth a try," the mayor agreed. "Okay, people, we've got work to do. Colonel Reeves, I want a full assessment of our defensive capabilities and a strategy for upgrading them using our hybrid tech. Dr. Patel, work with Zalrin to prepare a presentation of our medical breakthroughs. Maybe we can appeal to their self-interest. Jake, you're our best communicator. I need you to draft a message to the Tharkan fleet, something that might at least buy us some time. As the meeting broke up, Jake pulled Zalrin aside. Hey, he said softly, noticing the way her skin had taken on a pale, sickly hue. You okay? Zalrin's crest drooped. This is all my fault, she whispered. I've brought destruction to your home, just as I did to mine. Jake shook his head firmly. No, you haven't. You've brought us knowledge, progress, friendship. Whatever happens next, we're facing it together. Over the next few days, New Haven transformed. The once open colony became a fortified encampment. Colonists worked around the clock, guided by Zalrin and Lyra's knowledge of Tharkan technology. Satellite dishes were repurposed into makeshift energy shields. The medical lab's particle accelerator was modified into a rudimentary but powerful energy weapon. Even the children were put to work, their small hands perfect for weaving complex circuitry into existing systems. In the communications center, Jake labored over the message to the Tharkan fleet. How do you reason with a civilization that sees you as inferior? How do you appeal to the humanity of beings that weren't human? You're approaching it wrong, Zalrin said, reading over his shoulder. The exalted don't care about appeals to morality or cooperation. You need to make them see that destroying us would be against their own interests. Jake nodded, understanding dawning. We need to make ourselves too valuable to destroy. As the deadline for the Tharkan arrival drew nearer, tension in the colony ratcheted up. Families huddled together in reinforced shelters. Those with combat experience, whether from Earth's military or the rough frontiers of space, took up positions at hastily constructed defense posts. Dr. Patel spoke up, his usual calm demeanor shaken. What about evacuation? Surely we have enough ships to go where? Jake interrupted. We're light years from the nearest human settlement. We'd never make it before they caught up to us. A heavy silence fell over the room. It was Lyra, Zalrin's young Tharkan assistant, who finally broke it. We fight, she said, her voice small but determined. We've been adapting Tharkan technology to human systems. Maybe we can use that to our advantage. Colonel Reeves nodded slowly. The kid's right. We might be outgunned, but we got something they don't expect. A hybrid of human and Tharkan tech, plus intimate knowledge of their systems, thanks to Zalrin and Lyra. Mayor Chen looked around the room, her gaze settling on each face in turn. All right, she said finally. We prepare to defend ourselves. But I want options beyond just military resistance. Zalrin, is there any chance of negotiating with your people? Zalrin's crest rippled in a gesture of uncertainty. The exalted do not negotiate with those they see as inferior. But perhaps if we could demonstrate the value of cooperation between our peoples, show them the advancements we've made. It's worth a try, the mayor agreed. Okay, people, we've got work to do. Colonel Reeves, I want a full assessment of our defensive capabilities and a strategy for upgrading them using our hybrid tech. Dr. Patel, work with Zalrin to prepare a presentation of our medical breakthroughs. Maybe we can appeal to their self-interest. Jake, you're our best communicator. I need you to draft a message to the Tharkan fleet, something that might at least buy us some time. As the meeting broke up, Jake pulled Zalrin aside. Hey, he said softly, noticing the way her skin had taken on a pale, sickly hue. You okay? Zalrin's crest drooped. This is all my fault, she whispered. I've brought destruction to your home, just as I did to mine. Jake shook his head firmly. No, you haven't. You've brought us knowledge, progress, friendship. Whatever happens next, we're facing it together. Over the next few days, New Haven transformed. The once open colony became a fortified encampment. Colonists worked around the clock, guided by Zalrin and Lyra's knowledge of Tharkan technology. Satellite dishes were repurposed into makeshift energy shields. The medical lab's particle accelerator was modified into a rudimentary but powerful energy weapon. Even the children were put to work, their small hands perfect for weaving complex circuitry into existing systems. In the communications center, Jake labored over the message to the Tharkan fleet. How do you reason with a civilization that sees you as inferior? How do you appeal to the humanity of beings that weren't human? You're approaching it wrong, Zolran said, reading over his shoulder. The exalted don't care about appeals to morality or cooperation. You need to make them see that destroying us would be against their own interests. Jake nodded, understanding dawning. We need to make ourselves too valuable to destroy. As the deadline for the Tharkan arrival drew nearer, tension in the colony ratcheted up. Families huddled together in reinforced shelters. Those with combat experience, whether from Earth's military or the rough frontiers of space, took up positions at hastily constructed defense posts. The night before the Tharkan fleet was due to arrive, Jake found Zolran standing on the beach, staring up at the stars. The moons of their adopted world cast an ethereal glow over the landscape, making Zolran's blue skin shimmer. Second thoughts? Jake asked, coming to stand beside her. Zolran's crest rippled in a gesture he'd come to recognize as rueful amusement. About a great many things, she admitted. I keep thinking about the path that led me here. If I had just kept quiet, accepted my place in Tharkan society. You wouldn't be you, Jake finished for her. The person who's revolutionized our medical technology, who's taught us so much about the universe. The friend we've all come to care for. Zolran turned to look at him, her 4 eyes blinking in that mesmerizing pattern. You humans are remarkable, she said softly. In the face of annihilation, you choose to stand and fight, not just for yourselves, but for an alien who brought this danger to your doorstep. Jake shrugged, a smile tugging at his lips. What can I say? It's a human thing. We're too stubborn to know when we're beat. A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the gentle lapping of waves on the shore. Finally, Zolran spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. Jake, there's something I need to tell you about my research, the real reason the exalted fear it so much. But before she could continue, the night sky blazed with sudden light. Looking up, they saw multiple streaks cutting through the atmosphere, ships entering orbit. The Tharkans had arrived. In the colony, alarms began to blare. The sound of running feet and shouted orders filled the air as the people of New Haven rushed to their battle stations. Whatever Zolran had been about to reveal would have to wait. As they raced back towards the colony center, Jake's mind was racing. They had prepared as best they could, but would it be enough? Could this fledgling alliance of humans and Tharkan outcasts stand against the might of an advanced alien civilization? The answer, he knew, would determine not just their fate, but potentially the course of human history. As the first Tharkan ships became visible in the sky above, Jake steeled himself for the battle to come. Whatever happened next, New Haven would face it as they had faced everything else since Zolran's arrival. Together, with the unique blend of human determination and alien knowledge that had become their greatest strength. The moment of truth had arrived. The future of two species hung in the balance, and the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath in anticipation of what was to come. Preparing for battle. The sky above New Haven blazed with the fiery trails of descending Tharkan ships. In the colony's command center, organized chaos reigned as humans and their alien allies made their final preparations for the impending confrontation. Mayor Chen's voice cut through the din. Status report now. Colonel Reeves responded first, her eyes never leaving the tactical display. Energy shields are at 85% capacity and holding. We've got our makeshift weaponry online, but we're still untested against Tharkan military tech. Dr. Patel chimed in next. Medical teams are on standby. We've synthesized as much of Zolran's regenerative compound as we could. It should help with treating injuries, but we're in uncharted territory here. Jake, manning the communications array, spoke up. I've got our message queued up and ready to broadcast on all frequencies. Just say the word. All eyes turned to Zalrin, who stood rigid, her crest flat against her head. The lead ship is the unyielding truth, she said, her voice tight. It bears the insignia of High Inquisitor Vorkon. He was my mentor before my exile. A ripple of surprise went through the room. Jake stepped closer to Zalrin, concern etched on his face. Your mentor. Could that be an advantage for us? Zalrin's 4 eyes blinked rapidly. I don't know. Vorkon was always more open-minded than most of the Exalted, but he's still bound by our laws and customs. Mayor Chen nodded grimly. It's something to work with, at least. Jake, send the message. Jake took a deep breath and activated the broadcast. His voice, calm and measured, echoed through the command center and out into space. Attention Tharkan Fleet. This is Jake Rayleigh of the human colony New Haven. We know why you're here, but we ask that you hear us out. We're not your enemies. In fact, thanks to Zalrin, we've made advancements that could benefit both our peoples. We invite you to land and discuss this peacefully. Please respond. 10 seconds ticked by as they waited for a response. Suddenly, the communications array crackled to life. A deep, resonant voice filled the room, speaking in the melodious tones of the Tharkan language. Zalrin quickly translated. Human colony, this is High Inquisitor Vorkon of the Tharkan Ascendancy. Your harboring of the exile Zalrin is a violation of our highest laws. Surrender her and all research materials immediately, or face the consequences. Mayor Chen looked to Zalrin. Any chance they're bluffing? Zalrin's crest rippled in negation. The Tharkan do not bluff. But the fact that Vorkon responded at all is unusual. Typically, the Exalted would not deign to communicate with a lesser species. Jake seized on this. Then let's keep them talking. Buy us more time. He reactivated the comlink. Inquisitor Vorkon, we understand your position. But surely, as beings of science and reason, you must see the value in the advancements we've made here. Zalrin's research has already led to breakthroughs that could save countless lives, Tharkan lives included. There was a long pause before Vorkon's reply came. Your appeals to reason are noted, human. However, the law of the ascendancy is absolute. You have 1 planetary rotation to comply, or we will be forced to take action. As the communication cut off, a flurry of activity erupted in the command center. Colonel Reeves began barking orders to finalize defensive positions. Dr. Patel hurried off to brief his medical teams. Mayor Chen turned to Jake and Zalrin, her expression grave. It's not much, but it's time. Use it wisely. Zalrin, you mentioned there was something important about your research. Now's the time to share it. Zalrin nodded, her crest rising slightly in determination. Yes, my work on cellular regeneration. It's not just about curing disease. In my final tests before my exile, I discovered something extraordinary. The treatment doesn't just repair damaged genes. It has the potential to alter them fundamentally. Jake's eyes widened as he began to understand. You mean genetic engineering? Zalrin confirmed. On a scale previously thought impossible. The ability to adapt a species to new environments, cure genetic disorders, potentially even extend lifespans dramatically. The implications were staggering. Mayor Chen voiced what they were all thinking. No wonder the Exalted want to suppress this. It could upend their entire social structure. Zalrin's crest proved. Yes, in the wrong hands, it could be used to create a race of super beings, to enforce genetic purity, to widen the gap between the Exalted and the lower castes. But used responsibly, ethically, it could revolutionize life as we know it, Jake finished. For both our species. Mayor Chen was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Finally, she spoke. This changes things. We're not just defending a colony anymore. We're protecting knowledge that could reshape the future of 2 species, maybe more. As if to underscore her words, the ground shook with a distant explosion. Colonel Reeves' voice crackled over the comms. They're testing our shields. Southeastern quadrant hit. but holding. "All right, people, this is it," Mayor Chen announced. "We've got one rotation to make our case or prepare for full-scale assault. Jake, work with Zalarin and Dr. Patel. I want a presentation that will knock the spots off these Thurkin. Show them exactly what they stand to lose if they destroy us. Colonel Reeves, you have free rein to deploy our defenses as you see fit. And someone find Lyra. Her insider knowledge of Thurkin ship systems might give us an edge." As the command center erupted into action, Jake pulled Zalarin aside. "Hey," he said softly, "you okay? I know facing your own people can't be easy." Zalarin's 4 eyes met his, and he saw a swirl of emotions in their alien depths. "I am conflicted," she admitted. "Part of me still longs for acceptance from my own kind, but a larger part knows that what we're doing here, this union of human and Thurkan, it's more important than any one individual or society." Jake nodded, understanding. "Whatever happens, we're in this together. You're one of us now, remember." A ripple passed through Zalarin's crest, a Thurkan smile. "Yes, together." As they turned to join Dr. Patel, another explosion rocked the colony. The Thurkan ships loomed in the sky, a constant reminder of the threat they faced. But looking around at the determined faces of humans and aliens working side by side, Jake felt a surge of hope. They had one planetary rotation to change the course of history, to prove that cooperation could triumph over conflict, that the union of two species could be stronger than the sum of its parts. It was a monumental task, but as he told Zalarin on the beach, humans were too stubborn to know when they were beat. The next few hours would determine not just the fate of New Haven, but potentially the future of interstellar relations. As Jake and Zalarin set to work, the twin suns of their adopted world began to rise, casting a hopeful glow over the embattled colony. The battle for the future was about to begin. Humanity's stand. The sky above New Haven erupted in chaos as the Thurkan assault began. Dropships screamed through the atmosphere, their hulls glowing red-hot from the friction. The colony's makeshift defense grid came to life, spitting bolts of energy skyward in a desperate attempt to thin the incoming swarm. In the command center, Colonel Reeves coordinated the defense with grim determination. "Charlie team, focus fire on Sector 4. Delta, I need that jamming field up now." Mayor Chen stood at the center of the storm, her voice steady as she relayed information and encouragement to the scattered defenders. Dr. Patel's fingers flew over his console, monitoring the integrity of their shields and the status of their secret weapons. Jake and Zalarin worked in perfect sync, their hybrid command interface allowing them to switch seamlessly between human and Thurkan systems. "Incoming on your left flank," Jake shouted, and Zalarin's fingers danced across the controls, redirecting defensive fire. The first wave of dropships broke through their defenses, disgorging squads of Thurkan shock troops onto the outskirts of the colony. The aliens were a terrifying sight, their armor gleaming and their weapons humming with barely contained energy. But the defenders of New Haven were ready. As the Thurkans advanced, they triggered the first of many surprises. Hidden emitters activated, bathing the invaders in a field of energy that played havoc with their neural implants. Entire squads stumbled, their movements uncoordinated and confused. "It's working," Dr. Patel exclaimed. "The disruption field is more effective than we hoped." Colonel Reeves allowed herself a grim smile. "Good. Now let's show them what else we've got up our sleeves." Across the battlefield, the unique combination of human ingenuity and Thurkan technology began to turn the tide. Colonists wielding hybrid weapons moved with a fluidity that caught the invaders off guard. Repurposed mining equipment, guided by Lyra's expert programming, emerged from hidden bunkers to engage the Thurkan armored units. In orbit, the situation was more dire. The colony's few space-capable craft were overwhelmed, forced into evasive maneuvers by the superior Thurkan fleet. But even here, humanity's adaptability shone through. Pilots pushed their ships to the limit, using maneuvers that the rigid Thurkan command structure struggled to counter. Back in the command center, Alarms blared as a new threat emerged. "They're powering up their main guns," Zolrin shouted, her crest flattening in alarm. "If those hit us, our shields won't stand a chance." Jake's mind raced. "We need to disrupt their targeting systems. Zolrin, remember that backdoor you found in their communication protocols?" Zolrin's eyes widened in understanding. "It's risky, but it might work. Cover me." As Zolrin's fingers flew across the interface, inputting complex Thurkan code, Jake coordinated with the remaining defense batteries to buy her time. Seconds stretched like hours as the energy buildup in the Tharkan capital ships reached critical levels. Just as it seemed all hope was lost, Zolrin let out a triumphant cry. "I'm in, disrupting their systems. Now." The effect was immediate and dramatic. The Tharkan fleet's formation broke apart, ships veering wildly as conflicting commands flooded their networks. The charged particle beams meant to obliterate New Haven fired harmlessly into space. A cheer went up from the defenders, but their celebration was short-lived. Commander Vexler's face appeared on the main screen, his features contorted with rage. "Enough of these games," he snarled. "I will not be outsmarted by primitives and traitors." The screen went dark, and moments later, a massive energy signature appeared on their sensors. "He's coming down himself," Colonel Reeves said grimly. "And he's bringing their biggest gun with him." As Vexler's command ship descended through the atmosphere, its size became apparent. It dwarfed anything the colonists had, a behemoth of Thurkan military might. The ship's main cannon began to glow, preparing to fire a shot that would vaporize the heart of New Haven. "We can't stop that," Dr. Paddle said, his voice hollow. "Our shields will collapse in seconds." Mayor Chen's face was set in determination. "Then we don't stop it. We redirect it." She turned to Zolrin. "Your research, you said it could work on humans. Could it? Could it work fast enough to let someone survive that kind of energy?" Zolrin's crest rippled in shock. "Theoretically, yes, but the risk." "We're out of options," Chen said firmly. "Do it, to me." The room erupted in protests, but Chen silenced them with a raised hand. "This is my choice. For our people, all our people." Time seemed to slow as Dr. Patel and Zolrin worked feverishly, injecting the mayor with a cocktail of experimental compounds. Jake coordinated the remaining defenders, buying precious seconds as Vexler's ship entered firing range. As the Tharkan weapon reached full charge, Mayor Chen stepped out onto the colony's central plaza. Her skin rippled strangely, her body already beginning to change at the cellular level. Vexler's voice boomed across the battlefield. "Witness the price of defying the exalted." The cannon fired, a lance of pure energy that lit up the sky like a second sun. It struck Chen head-on. And then something incredible happened. Instead of disintegrating, her altered body began to absorb the energy. She glowed brighter and brighter, her form shifting and growing. With a cry that was both human and something more, Chen redirected the absorbed energy. A beam of light shot from her transformed body, striking Vexler's ship. The massive vessel shuddered, its systems overloading from the unexpected feedback. As the light faded, Chen collapsed to the ground, her body slowly returning to its human form. But the damage was done. Vexler's ship, its main weapon destroyed and its commander in shock, began to list in the sky. Jake's voice cut through the stunned silence. "All units, press the advantage. Push them back." The defenders of New Haven, reinvigorated by their leader's sacrifice, surged forward. The Tharkan lines, already in disarray, began to crumble. One by one, the invading ships either retreated or surrendered. In the chaotic aftermath, as the dust settled and the wounded were tended to, Jake found Zolrin staring at the spot where Chen had made her stand. "I never imagined," she said softly, "that your people were capable of such evolution." Jake smiled tiredly. "That's humanity for you. We're too stubborn to accept limitations, even the ones nature tries to impose on us." As the twin suns set on the battered but unbroken colony, news of their victory was already spreading. The first human-alien battle had ended not in destruction, but in a triumph of cooperation and shared strength. In the days that followed, as Mayor Chen recovered and diplomatic channels opened with both Earth and the more progressive elements of Tharkan society, it became clear that New Haven's stand had changed everything. Humanity had proven itself on the galactic stage, and the Tharkan people were beginning to question the rigid structures that had held them back for so long. Zulrun, once in exile, found herself at the center of a new movement, one that sought to bridge the gap between species and create a future where the best of both could thrive. As Jake watched the sun rise on a new era, Zulrun by his side, he couldn't help but smile. They had faced annihilation and emerged stronger, not just as a colony or a species, but as something new, a testament to what could be achieved when different peoples came together, combining their strengths and overcoming their differences. The battle was over, but the real adventure, forging a new path among the stars, was just beginning.